Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com. So we have a special guest with us. We covered this story about this black socialist group, and the FBI raided them and literally charged them with working with Russia. It's all made up. I'm going to give you an update, and we have a special guest with us. There's no prison time for a Uhuru Russian conspiracy case. It was political speech. U.S. District Judge William Jung sentenced an ex-member of the St. Petersburg activist group. Here we go. A federal judge said Monday that he is not inclined to give prison time in the case against members of the St. Petersburg-based Uhuru Movement, who were convicted in September of conspiring to act as Russian agents. I'm not kidding. In a sentence hearing Monday for Augustus C. Romain Jr., a former member of the black activist group and one of the 4 convicted defendants, U.S. District Judge William Jung said their conduct ultimately amounted to the exercise of free speech, even though they were convicted. The judge doesn't think that they committed a crime. Everything they did here was political speech, the judge said. I eminently disagree with all of their speech. I'm paraphrasing. These people spit on the flag that actually protects them. Well, it's not actually protecting them if they're being taken to court and convicted for speech. The 3 other defendants convicted in the case are scheduled for a separate sentencing hearing next week. We have one of those guests on in just a second. They include Omali Yeshitela, the longtime leader of the Uhuru Movement and its umbrella organization, the African People's Socialist Party, and Penny Hess and Jesse Novell, leaders of the group's white allies. We have anything for this, right? The four were convicted in September trial on charges of conspiracy to act as agents of the Russian government without notifying the Attorney General. A jury delivered not guilty verdicts for the more serious charge of acting as Russian agents. The government accused the group of acting for 7 years on behalf of the Russian government to spread propaganda and sow political discord in the United States. Evidence showed the group communicated regularly with the Russian man, Alexander Ionov, who runs the organization called the Anti-Globalization Movement of Russia. That's what they pinned their whole case on, that they had communication with this guy from Russia. He, in turn, regularly reported on his activities to Russian intelligence agents. That's what they say. With funding from the Russian government, Ionov worked to develop relationships with American activists and separatist groups to exploit and inflame U.S. political divisions. This is all according to the government. The Uhurus became part of those efforts. The government presented evidence showing that Yeshitela and others worked at Ionov's direction, which they didn't, organizing protests and featuring pro-Russian messaging and propaganda in their newspaper, The Burning Spear. Romain, who goes by the name Gazi Kadzo, left the Uhurus in 2018. He then started his own group in Atlanta, dubbed the Black Hammer, which continued to communicate with Ionov. Now, they say that they were, wait till you hear the things that they actually said they did. It's crazy. As the leader of the Black Hammer, Romain organized multiple demonstrations. Really? How big were those demonstrations? About a handful of people? Wouldn't that be embarrassing for the Russian government? They're trying to sow discord and nobody shows up? Including one outside CNN's Atlanta headquarters. The demonstration featured Russian flags and rhetoric parroting Russian and anti-American propaganda. That's what they say about me when I tell people the truth about Ukraine. They say I'm parroting Russian propaganda if you tell the truth about Ukraine or Syria. Prosecutors said Romain recruited homeless people to participate in his demonstrations, which tended to be short-lived, really short-lived demonstrations where no one showed up. This is what you're convicting them of. Don't you think Russia would be embarrassed? At sentencing, the judge noted their ineffectiveness, meaning the demonstrations. Listen to what the judge said this. This was not the Revolutionary Army marching down the street. This was 4 guys with a bullhorn and a puppy dog wrangling up people and protesting. It wasn't quite the Long March of Chairman Mao. So this was nothing. So this is a political prosecution for whatever the FBI thinks it needs to score political points for. So here, let me just give you a quick recap. What happened, the FBI raided their headquarters in 2022, and they indicted them in 2023. And just last September, with the trial with split contradictory verdict, and not guilty of acting as Russian agents, but guilty of conspiring to act as Russian agents. So they didn't actually act as Russian agents, but they were talking about it. That's according to this ruling. Everything the Department of Justice charges is just speech, circulating petitions, giving speeches, printing articles, attending conferences, testifying to UN hearings. Also, Uhuru targeted with economic sanctions, including closing of bank accounts. So they did the banking on the Uhuru people. They went after them financially. They debanked them. They canceled their mortgage. They did an arson fire. They withdrawal of ARPA grant funds, denial of building permits, all linked to a bogus Russian influence accusation. And so now they're going to be sentenced. The three more people. So one person got their sentence suspended for probation. So, but there's three more are going to be sentenced coming up this week. What will happen Monday? Max sentence 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine each, or no time or probation. It's up to the judge. They can remand directly to prison or remain out pending appeal. We say not 1 day in prison. Over 1,600 character letters have been submitted and is expecting to pack the court. So let me bring to you Chairman Omali Yeshitela is a renowned political activist and author, as well as the founder and current chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, which leads the Uhuru Movement. The Uhuru Movement is a pan-Africanist organization that aims to unite and liberate African and African people worldwide. Chairman Omali was convicted just in September of conspiring to act as a Russian agent. Not that he acted as a Russian agent. He was not guilty on that. His sentencing scheduled for next week. So let me bring to you Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Nice to see you again.
Well, thank you very much. It's really important for us to be here. We appreciate your allowing us access to this platform. It helps us to break out of the kind of information encirclement that's been done by media associated with the government. We can't get access through forces like Zuckerberg, New York Times, Washington Post, and they engage in a certain kind of self-censorship. And you would think that since they have characterized this trial, this persecution as related to some kind of national security issue, that they would be talking about it on a regular basis. But the people only hear about it in instances like this, like the article that you just read. When some determination is made in a court, or when they indict us, and then they take State Department press releases as news. They substitute news.
Yeah, so, that's exactly what they're doing. They're being what stenographers to the State Department in their news reporting of this incident, instead of being actual reporters and trying to find the lies of the government, which is they're obvious. And even the judge said that this was just speech. So isn't that kind of crazy that the judge would say this is speech, yet he would allow the conviction to stand?
It's hard for me to understand. It's hard for me to understand why we were in court in the first place, in the sense that we were quite clear that we were not breaking laws. I mean, it's ridiculous to say that an organization that's fighting for self-determination, that spent more than 50 years fighting for self-determination, would abandon the quest for self-determination, then turn ourselves over to Russia, to be agents of Russia or any other force. So it's hard to understand, except that the charges were all political charges. They were created as political crimes, and that's what it's about.
And so why do you so was this just part of the Russiagate hysteria that they had to get a win because the Mueller report was such a failure with Donald Trump, and they couldn't connect anybody criminally to Russia? Was this them just trying to go after you to try to get a win on the Russiagate front, or did you actually pose some kind of a threat to the FBI? Why would the FBI do this?
Well, I think part of it is true that it's a part of the whole Russiagate thing, and I'm glad you mentioned that because people make these statements about how Donald Trump and how we allowed for some kind of Russian participation in election in this country, or that Trump was an election denier. But the reality is, where we saw the election denial start was with Hillary Clinton.
Correct.
Who rejected the notion that Trump had won the election, who said it was Russia, 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 Russia. And they spent, for the duration of his presidency, trying to make it impossible for him to govern. And so it was Clinton, it was the Democratic Party. And people talk about Trump representing a pro-fascist kind of movement. But if anything having to do with taking away people's right to speech, people's right even to utilize the democratic process, then what we are facing with right now is something that came under the Democratic Party, and Kamala Harris and her crew are responsible for this. So I think that's part of it. And I think that it was part of it because Biden clearly and the Democratic Party were clearly in trouble going into the elections, and Sleepy Joe had lived up to his name. I think that he had to be tough, had to show toughness and what have you. And I think it's a real struggle that the United States is involved in right now, internationally and domestically. It was not we who climbed the walls of the Capitol and defecated on the floors and did all of these kinds of things. That's part of the internal contradiction that the United States is experiencing now. And it's experiencing contradictions internationally with the reemergence of Russia as an international force intervening in an arena that had been recognized for the longest period of time as U.S. had hegemonic authority in places in Africa and places in the Middle East, and now there's Russia, now there's China. The whole economic and political configuration of the world now is being challenged in a very serious way. So as a part of the response to that, we become scapegoats. That's part of what we're looking at. And part of it is too, and I want to say, I think this is important because that the U.S. would make us look peculiar because of our politics, our demands. But one reason it would look peculiar is because the U.S. government has done a lot of work to make sure of which issues and which politic from our community would be heard. We oppose the welfare of slavery. We believe in self-determination, and we fought for that. But this is not peculiar. The reason it may appear peculiar is because this whole issue of right to speech has been something that's crushed the voices of people who stood for self-determination in our community, and they would give us an Obama or give us a Kamala Harris and give us people like that, when that's not a reflection of the views and the aspirations of our community. So they create this crisis. They respond to a real crisis on the one hand, and then they give the people a boogeyman that's responsible for the problems that they have. And everybody in this country is upset. Everybody's upset. I mean, all the polls indicate everybody's upset. And so we become that instrument that they would use to create this false narrative, and they would also attempt to eliminate any criticism that Black people make about our conditions by saying it's Russian-inspired, it's under the control and direction of Russians. It has nothing to do with the real world that we exist in.
So here you are, a grassroots, on-the-ground organization, African Americans for 50 years, and so you're making a real critique of the Democratic Party during an election season, and that could take away their much-needed African American vote that they would need. And so they needed to silence you and discredit your critique of what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and the Democrats have failed to do and what they have actually done. And so that's what this is about.
That's what it's about.
That's what this is about. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it's about. Because the Democratic Party, we can't say Obama ever lied to us because he never promised us anything. We can't say that that Biden or any of them, because they don't have to promise anything. They try to frighten black people that if you don't vote for us, then you're going to get Trump or you're going to get, a nastier version of us, et cetera. So there's nothing, and we challenge that. That's illegitimate. And they also promote this welfare slavery. So we say self-determination. We don't want to see people living on their knees, begging, and et cetera. We want to be a self-determining people.
So can you explain quickly what you mean, what you oppose welfare slavery?
I mean that there's a whole institutionalized welfare system that the Democratic Party is tightly connected to. That there are hundreds, thousands of people who are employed in this country as a consequence of the institutionalized welfare for black people. And while we believe, I'm a believer in reparations, and I believe that African people do things, but not something that would cripple a people, not something that would deny people a right to be self-determining, destroy the businesses in our community in the name of integration, destroy the actual capacity of the people, even like welfare, that even break up families because husbands and wives and men and women can't live together under the conditions that they impose to get this pittance that they call welfare. We believe that people can be self-determining, and we should. And we've created more than 50 independent economic institutions in this country. We've created food courts, and we've developed markets, places, so that in food deserts, as they like to refer to them, and so that money can circulate in the community and people can buy and sell from each other and anybody else who they want to buy and sell from, but not be on our bellies all the time, having to look for the good wishes of somebody else. That breaks the spirit of the people, and there's nothing dignified at all about that. So we say we can take care of ourselves. We do believe in reparations, but the billions and billions of dollars that's thrown into this whole, institutionalized, these whole welfare institutions, corporations, billions of dollars go to corporations to pay them not to farm, not to produce anything, or to purchase everything, and then the U.S. government purchases these resources from them, as opposed to allowing people to provide for ourselves. And it's this real cozy, incestuous kind of relationship that exists there at the expense of everybody, the dignity of our people. There's no dignity in being a voluntary slave.
So that is a radical view of things. That's a radical message to bring to black communities. And that's certainly not a message that the Democratic Party brings. And so, yeah, I think everybody could get behind normal people without the filter of the propaganda from the government and the government and lapdog media. You are just talking about self-determination, black people taking care of black people. Yes. And I think most people exposed to that message would support it. And so they can't have that. They need to keep you dependent. They need to keep you split. They need to keep you fighting amongst each other. It's divide and conquer, which has been that's the name of the game. So, is there anything that the people watching can do to help your cause right now?
I hope so. One of the things that I think we've made it difficult for the government to treat us as common criminals. There's no gun running. There's no drug pushing. There's no trafficking, human trafficking, or anything like that. Everything that we've been involved in is supposedly protected by the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, et cetera. That's all we've done. And they just don't like the message. We opposed to the Ukraine war. We opposed it, and now we're living at, and we get attacked at pre-dawn with flashbang grenades, with battering rams, with armored vehicles, personnel carriers parked in our communities, frightening the whole community. And now we're looking at a situation where the Biden administration is deploying long-range missiles deeper into Russia, possibly taking the people to the cusp of a nuclear conflagration. And I'm threatened with jail for opposing that. This is an assault on the right to the people to have different views. And I think it's important to recognize again that the foundational charge of being Russian agents, the jury said that's not true. We were not Russian agents. And so it's not what we did, it's what they said we thought. It's a thought crime that they're talking about. And even what they say we thought is a distortion of what we were really about. So that's the kind of thing. And we're hoping that people will go to Hands Off Uhuru, that's UHURU.org. And what we've done also is that we have redone the trial. We've used the transcripts of the trial, the actual transcripts. We've done animated versions of the trial. You can go to handsoffuhuru.org and you can see and hear the lead FBI agent said, no, they did not engage in election interference. No, they didn't do anything different now than they've done over the last 50 years. And they know because they took the equivalent of 2.5 million books from us in terabytes. So they know that all of that stuff is untrue. So people can come to handsoffuhuru.org. And people also on the 16th, everybody who can should come to Tampa, Florida, because it's a political trial. And I think it's really important for the people to demonstrate opposition to this. It's an assault on the right to free speech for everybody. And on the 15th of December in St. Petersburg, Florida, right across the bridge, which is one of the places that they attacked with the battering ram. They broke down every door there. They took a radio station that we are responsible for having developed there off the air. They went into our archives and that has something like 50 years of materials. And we don't know everything that they took from there. They terrorized the community in the process of doing this. So come to St. Petersburg, Florida on the 15th for a rally that we're going to do there. And on the 16th, we're going to be at the court for the sentencing. And we're calling everybody. People have united with this from across the political spectrum. People have opposed it. There are people who've been able to see that's just what a farce this thing is and how dangerous it is for free speech in this country.
Well, everybody go to handsoffuhuru.com or .org?
.org.
Okay. Well, do you think, you might have a bit of a sympathy from the next administration, the Trump administration, because he was also bogusly charged with working with Russia the same way you are, and of course he wasn't, and so maybe he would have some sympathy for your cause?
Maybe he would. I mean, because the fact of the matter is, I've told people that you cannot be opposed to free speech because the person whose speech is being taken is somebody you don't like. And because that's not Donald Trump's free speech, it's not Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru Three's free speech, it's everybody's free speech. And if they can use us to open the door to make an assault on free speech using Donald Trump, using Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru Movement, that's an attack on everybody.
That's right.
And so we have to fight seriously to protect that.
That's exactly right. That was my message to Cornel West when he came on this show. If they can do this to a former president, they can do it to you. They can do it to me. They can do it to the Uhurus. So free speech guarantee. You don't need the First Amendment for speech that you like. You need free speech and protection of the First Amendment for speech that you find offensive. Nobody needs protection for speech they like.
The government in a press release said something to the effect that we have weaponized free speech. And the thing is that free speech is a weapon against tyranny. That's why it's in the Constitution in the first place. King George, they didn't like the treatment of King George, despite the fact that black people did not have free speech under the First Amendment or the Bill of Rights, because when it was adopted in 1791, we were property. That's why we've always been in the vanguard of the fight for free speech, freedom of assembly, and whatever, because we didn't have it where there was a presumption of free speech for others. There was no such presumption as it came to African people. So We've been on the vanguard, and we're not doing anything different now than we have done since we've been in this country. So let's fight for free speech. Let's protect it.
Have any national black leaders reached out to you, like Cornel West or?
Cornel West has expressed support. He has expressed support. He's one person who has done that. Yes.
That's great to hear.
I say that, but they're few and far between.
Yeah.
But there's a mass. There are hundreds, literally. If you keep up on what's happening on the 15th and 16th, you're going to see that hundreds of people are going to be coming into Florida for the trial, for the rally that we're going to, and you're going to see it crosses the political spectrum. It's not just Africans. It's people like Scott Ritter, who has stood with us. It's just an array of forces across the political spectrum. People who are able to see far enough to recognize what this attack on our speech represents for everybody. So it's an interesting kind of thing that they have unleashed in terms of uniting people who might otherwise never have had a relationship with each other. And I think, and I've come to really admire and love Scott Ritter because of his stance, and which has been a very powerful stance. And he's been with us for a while now, as one example. And there are others who have done that as well.
Okay, well, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, we wish you luck in your sentencing on Monday. Everybody go to handsoffuhuru.org and show up in St. Petersburg on this Sunday and Monday coming up. Best of luck to you. If anything else we can do, let us know.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Uhuru.
Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com.